There's a moment, in horror movies, where the character realizes the danger isn't outside. It's not at the door. It's not in the yard. It's already inside the house. And there's always that terrible pause. That frozen second where they don't move. They don't speak. They just process. What you're about to hear is that moment. Except it wasn't a movie. And the person who lived through it is named Caleb. The summer of 2022. Caleb was 26. Worked in IT. Good job, stable life, kind of boring. By his own admission. His friend group had been planning a lake house trip for months. 6 people 1 week. A rented house on Lake Cumberland in Kentucky. Caleb had never been to Kentucky. He was from Ohio, so it wasn't far. Just a couple of hours south. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon. The house was beautiful. Really beautiful. 2 stories. Big wraparound deck right over the water. A dock, a kayak rack. A gas grill the size of a small car. The kind of place that makes you feel like money well spent. They unloaded the cars, picked rooms, and immediately cracked open drinks on the deck. The water was that perfect deep green blue. The sky was cloudless. It was hot in the best possible way. Caleb remembered thinking, this is going to be one of those trips you talk about for years. He was right. Just not for the reason he expected. The first 2 days were perfect. Swimming, kayaking, late nights playing card games, sleeping in. The kind of trip you disappear into. On Monday night, around 2 a.m., everyone had gone to bed. Caleb was sharing a room on the ground floor with his buddy Derek.
Derek was already asleep. Caleb was still awake, scrolling his phone, when he heard something. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a sound. Like a drawer in the kitchen. Opening slowly. He stopped scrolling. Lay there. Told himself it was one of the others getting a snack. Told himself the old house was just settling. Told himself a lot of things. Then he heard footsteps. Careful footsteps. The kind someone takes when they're trying not to be heard. Moving through the kitchen. Toward the hallway. Caleb sat up in bed. He reached over and grabbed his phone. Pulled up the flashlight. Pointed it at the door. The door was closed. The footsteps stopped. 30 seconds of absolute silence. Then, the handle moved. Just a little, just enough to see. Someone on the other side of that door had reached for it. And then stopped. Caleb woke Derek up. Fast. Derek sat up, saw Caleb's face, and immediately knew something was wrong. They held completely still. Nothing happened for almost a full minute. Then they heard a door somewhere in the house, the back door. Near the utility room, open and close. Quietly, deliberately. Like someone leaving. They told the rest of the group at breakfast. Reactions were mixed. Some people thought it was probably just someone from their own group sleepwalking. Or maybe an animal had gotten in somehow. But Caleb knew what he'd heard. And he knew what that door handle looked like moving. They checked the back door. It was unlocked. None of them remembered leaving it unlocked. But nobody could say for certain they hadn't. The property manager was called. He drove out that afternoon. He walked the house, nodded a lot, said things like, "These old houses," and, "Probably just a raccoon." He reset the back door lock. He told them to keep it locked. He seemed a little too calm. Like maybe this wasn't the first time he'd gotten this call. That night, they locked every door and windows. They felt better. For about 24 hours.
Wednesday afternoon, 3 of the group, not Caleb, took the kayaks out for a couple hours. Caleb and the remaining 2 stayed back at the house. He was on the deck reading when one of his friends, Mia, came out from inside with a strange expression on her face. "Hey," she said. "Was anyone in my room today?" Caleb looked up. "No." "Why?" Mia held up her phone. She'd left it charging on the nightstand when she went downstairs. It was still there, but it had been moved. It was now face down, on the opposite side of the nightstand from where she'd left it. It was a small thing, easy to explain away. But then she showed him something else. On the floor beside the nightstand, barely visible against the dark hardwood, were 2 faint impressions in the dust. Boot prints. Facing the bed. Someone had stood there. Right there. Next to where she slept. And just stood. They called the local sheriff's department. A deputy arrived within the hour. He was thorough professional and clearly experienced. He did a full sweep of the house. Ground floor. Second floor. And then he asked if any of them had been in the basement. They looked at each other. The rental listing had mentioned a basement, for storage it said. They'd never gone down there. The door was set into the wall under the stairs, easy to miss. The deputy took out his flashlight and opened it. The stairs were old and wooden. The smell hit them immediately, stale, close, like a room with no airflow. He went down first. Caleb followed. The basement was small. Water heater, some shelves with old paint. Cans. A folding cot in the corner. An old green military blanket on the cot. On the shelf next to the cot, 3 things: a water bottle. Nearly empty. A small bag of crackers. A phone charger. Still plugged into an outlet in the wall. Caleb stared at all of it. Someone had been living down there. Not for a night. Not for 2 nights. The deputy picked up the water bottle carefully. "This is recent," he said. "Still has condensation. Whoever had been in that basement had been there the entire time they were in the house. Eating, sleeping. Listening to them from below. Coming upstairs when the house was quiet. Standing next to their beds. Over the following week, it came out that the property manager's brother, estranged, with a history of trespassing charges, had been living in and around the property for months. He'd done it before. At other rental properties. Moving through houses when renters were present. He was never violent. The investigators seemed almost reassured by that. Caleb wasn't. Because violence wasn't the point. The point was that for 5 days someone shared their house with them. Breathed the same air. Walked the same floors. And none of them ever knew. Until now, Caleb says he still checks under beds. Every hotel, every Airbnb. Every rental house. He doesn't apologize for it. And honestly, after hearing this story, I don't think you will either. Most people go camping to disconnect. No phones. No emails, no noise. Just you and the trees and the sound of a fire burning down to orange coals. It sounds peaceful. And it is. Until you realize that being disconnected out there, no signal, no neighbors, no way to call for help, is exactly what someone was counting on. This is Jade's story. And it starts with the most ordinary thing in the world. A campsite with good reviews. Jade was 29. Outdoor enthusiast. Solo camper. She'd done it dozens of times. Female solo camper, yeah, People always have something to say about that. She'd heard it all. She was experienced. She was prepared. She was careful. She had a hiking knife, a personal alarm, a GPS device, and had told 3 separate people exactly where she was going and when to expect her back. The campsite was in a national forest in northern Georgia, about 4 hours from Atlanta, off the main trail, accessible only by a 2-mile hike-in. She'd found it on an outdoor recreation app. 37 reviews. Most of them said the same thing: remote, beautiful, quiet, worth every step. She arrived on a Friday evening in late July. The site was perfect. A flat clearing beside a narrow creek. Pine trees so tall they blocked out most of the sky. Wildflowers along the bank. She set up her tent, started a small fire, made coffee, and sat watching the light disappear through the trees. It was exactly what she came for. She went to sleep around 10 p.m. At some point in the night, she thinks around 2 or 3 a.m., she woke up. No dramatic reason. Just woke up the way you sometimes do in a tent. Alert. Listening.
She lay there in her sleeping bag. The fire was out. The forest was doing what forests do at 3 a.m., that deep layered silence that isn't really silence at all. Insects. Wind. The creek. And then something else, footsteps on leaves and dirt. Moving around the perimeter of her campsite. Not fast, not rushed. Just circling. She held her breath. Told herself it was a deer. Maybe a raccoon. The footsteps stopped. For a long time, nothing. Then she heard breathing. Close, too close. Right outside her tent. She didn't move. Didn't make a sound. The breathing stayed there for what felt like forever. Then it moved away. Slow footsteps back into the dark. Jade lay absolutely still until sunrise. She didn't sleep. At dawn she came out of her tent. The campsite looked normal. The fire pit. Her gear. The creek. But when she walked the perimeter, just to check, she found something. Boot prints in the soft mud by the water's edge. Large. Deep. Recent. And beside them, in the flat dirt just at the edge of where the light from a phone might fall, a small circle. Like someone had crouched there. Right outside her tent. She photographed everything. She thought about leaving. She thought about it for a long time. Then she made a decision that she's since described as the best decision of her life. She packed up. Every single thing. Fast. And she started hiking out. The 2-mile trail back to the trailhead was mostly uphill. Narrow. Lots of switchbacks. Thick on both sides. She was about halfway out, maybe 40 minutes into the hike, when she heard it. Footsteps on the trail behind her. She stopped. Looked back. Nobody visible. She kept walking. The footsteps kept pace. She walked faster. So did they. Jade said something shifted in her at that moment. Not panic. She's too experienced for panic to be useful. Something colder. Calculation. She pulled out her personal alarm, a device that emits a 130 decibel shriek when activated, and held it in her right hand. She pulled her hiking knife with her left. And she stopped walking. Turned around. Faced the trail. "I know you're there," she said. Her voice was flat. Steady. "And I want you to know, I'm not scared. I'm angry. Come out now, or I start this alarm and I don't stop." 5 seconds of silence.
Then a man stepped out from a gap in the trees about 20 yards back. White male. Late 40s. Dirty jacket. No pack. No reason to be on that trail at that time. He looked at her. She looked at him. "You got a problem?" he said. "Yeah," Jade said. "You." She activated the alarm. The shriek of that alarm tore through the forest like something alive. The man flinched, covered his ears, and moved back. Jade turned and ran. She ran that last mile in under 12 minutes.
At the trailhead, there were 2 other cars. A couple unloading hiking gear looked up, startled, as she came flying out of the trees. She was breathless, shaking. She told them what happened. Asked them to call 911. They did. A ranger and 2 officers went in. They found the man about a mile down the trail. He gave a false name initially. Tried to say he was just hiking. When they ran his prints, he had a prior conviction. Unlawful restraint. In a different state. A different national forest. A different solo camper. That time, she hadn't heard him coming. Jade doesn't camp alone anymore. She says she doesn't regret going. She doesn't regret the alarm. She doesn't regret turning around and looking him in the eye. The one thing she regrets is the first decision, staying that first night. The moment something feels wrong, she told me, it is wrong. Trust that. Every time.
What if the most terrifying thing wasn't a stranger? What if it was someone you knew? Someone who smiled at you every morning. Someone who seemed completely normal. What if the horror was how long it took you to see it? This is the story of a family of 5. And a neighbor who had a very specific idea of what a perfect summer looked like. Their summer. The Harmons. That's not their real name. They asked to stay anonymous, and I'll respect that. Mom, dad, 3 kids. Ages 8, 12, and 15. They lived in a quiet suburb outside of Nashville. Nice neighborhood. Good schools. The kind of street where people wave at each other from their driveways. Their next-door neighbor was a man named Gary. Mid-50s single. Retired early. Kept his yard perfectly. Always friendly. A little too available, maybe, always just kind of there. But in a neighborhood way. Not alarming. He'd been their neighbor for 6 years. He knew the kids by name. He gave them Halloween candy. He waved at the school bus. Nobody ever had a single bad feeling about Gary. That's important. Remember that. In June, the Harmons rented a beach house in the Outer Banks, North Carolina. 2 weeks. Just the family. They were gone from June 14th to June 28th. They'd done the same trip the previous 2 summers. Same stretch of coast. Different house. This time, the house had a security camera system, indoor and outdoor. The owners had an app. They gave the Harmons access too, so they could check in. The first week was perfect. Beach days. Seafood dinners. Bonfires. Sandcastles. And then, on day 9, a Tuesday, the mother, Lynn, opened the security app just to check that the house was all locked up before they went out for dinner.
She went to the outdoor camera. Front porch view. And she stopped. Standing on their porch, 600 miles away in Nashville, was Gary. Just standing there. Looking at the front door. Lynn's hands were shaking when she showed her husband. They watched the footage together. Gary had arrived at 11 a.m. He stood on the porch for almost 8 minutes. Then he went around to the side gate, which was unlocked, and entered the backyard. The backyard camera showed him sitting in one of their patio chairs. For almost 2 hours. He sat in their yard, looked at their house. He walked to the kids' swing set, stood there for a few minutes. Then he went back through the gate, got in his car, and drove away. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Every single day for the remaining 5 days of their vacation, Gary came to their property. Different times, different durations. One day he tried the back door. It was locked. He stood at the door for almost 3 minutes. Then he left. The Harmons cut their trip short. They drove home on a Friday instead of Sunday. They didn't tell Gary they were coming back early. They parked down the street, and they watched. Sure enough, at around 1 p.m., Gary's car pulled out of his driveway. He drove around the block once. Then he parked in front of their house.
He got out, walked to the front door, knocked, waited, then walked around to the side gate. That's when Lynn's husband stepped out from between the houses and said Gary's name. Gary froze. He turned around. And for one moment, just one, his face was completely unguarded. It wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't guilt. It was something colder, like he'd been interrupted. Gary had an explanation for everything. He said he'd been keeping an eye on the house for them, checking for packages, making sure everything was okay. He said it with total composure, completely natural, like it was obvious. The police were sympathetic, but told the Harmons it was complicated. Gary had only been on the property. He hadn't broken in. Tennessee law has specific definitions for trespassing that made this harder to prosecute. But they did talk to him. Officially. And what came out of that conversation shook everyone. Gary, when asked directly if he'd ever entered the home while the family was away on previous vacations, paused. And then said, "You should really update your locks." Not a denial, not a yes. Just that. The Harmons had their locks changed that evening. When the locksmith opened the back door, he found something. A small scrape on the inside of the deadbolt mechanism. Recent. The kind of mark made by a key that was cut slightly wrong. Someone had made a copy of their key. An imperfect copy. But a copy. The Harmons moved 6 months later. They don't know what Gary was doing in their home. They don't know how many times he was in there. The youngest daughter still sleeps with the lights on. The 15-year-old asked, just once, "What was he looking for?" Lynn didn't have an answer. She's not sure there was anything specific he was looking for. She thinks he just wanted to be there. In their space. Inside the life they had. That's the part she can't shake. Not the danger. The intimacy of it. The way he sat in their yard. In their chair. In their sun. Like it was his. 3 stories. A basement. A trail. A backyard chair. 3 moments where the ordinary world showed its other face. And here's what I keep coming back to. None of these people did anything wrong. They went on vacation. They did what millions of people do every single summer. And yet, that's what makes these stories hard to put down. It's not the violence. There wasn't any. It's not the monsters. There weren't any of those either. It's the proximity. It's how close these things were. How quiet. How patient. The man in the basement had been there for days. The figure in the woods had been watching for hours. The neighbor had been inside their home. And nobody knew. Until they did.
If you're heading out on a vacation this summer, check your locks. Trust your instincts. And if something feels wrong, don't wait to find out if you're right. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you in the next one. Hey, before you go, if these stories stayed with you tonight, if you felt that weight, that slow creep of dread that a good true story gives you, then you already know what this channel is about. Every week, I bring you real stories, submitted by real people, told the way they deserve to be told.